Turning now to Ohio, where jurors have gone home for the day. They will continue to deliberate tomorrow in the pizza delivery retrial against Erica Stefanko.
Closing arguments were delivered earlier today. The prosecutors say Stefanko helped her then-husband Chad Cobb kill his ex-girlfriend Ashley Biggs over a bitter child custody dispute back in 2012.
Chad Cobb pleaded guilty in 2013 to beating and strangling Ashley Biggs to death and later implicated Stefanko in the murder. Now, Stefanko was later convicted of aggravated murder in 2020, but that conviction was overturned.
In the state's closing argument, they accused Stefanko of taking the stand to minimize her role in the whole ordeal, placing all of the blame on Chad.
When the defendant testified, what did she do? She sat up straight in that chair, minimized her part, denied her part, but blamed it on Chad. It's just cross. It's just, he said, just going back and forth. But the point is, they were together. They did it together. And it's your job, and your job only, to believe some, all, or none of what they said. The content of the recording, the subject matter of the recording. I can tell you what subject matter that you didn't hear, something you didn't hear mentioned, and that is anything about any drugs or drug plan. Listen to how serious she is about some of the things that she says in the conversation. You know, I told him, if this is too risky, don't go ahead with it. I thought he could do it because I've seen him get away with some crazy. Listen to how she describes the plan they're talking about. And think to yourself, is this a plan about planning meth or a plan about murder? How serious she's talking about it. She made that phone call, a burner phone. She purchased the minutes days before. And if you look at the exhibit, the phone records in there that are stipulated to, that phone was not used before, and that phone was not used after. That phone was used to make a call. Look at the records, you'll see calls coming in. You heard Matt Travis state that he called that number back multiple times. Officers, Detective Hitching stated, they called that number. That phone had one purpose, and that was to lure Ashley to that place so that murder can take place. Please remember some of the things the defendant said about this plan on the stand. Now, one of the first things is, she was at that scene to make that call. That call could have been made from anywhere. That call could have been made from anywhere. That 30-second call or a minute call could have been made from anywhere. What sense does it make to bring your 4 children out? And as they kept pointing out, one is nursing. What sense does it make to bring them out in the middle of the night that you could have made that call from your bed? You could have made the call while you were nursing from your home. You want to know why she came out? Because Chad cannot drive 2 cars at one time. That's why. Chad cannot drive 2 cars. The plan was to lure Ashley there and murder her. Put her in the back of her car, drive to that cornfield. If the plan was to plant drugs, Chad could have done that on his own. Meth can fit in your pocket. He could have drove the car. He could have parked where she said they parked and walked over to the scene. Why was she needed? She was needed because that wasn't the plan. She was needed because, again, Chad cannot drive 2 cars. When you get back there, look at exhibit number 127. Just look at it. To plant meth, do you need gloves with knuckles? To plant meth, do you need a knife? To plant meth, do you need zip ties? Look neoprene mask. Common sense and reason. If you see someone dressed like this with face paint on, are you gonna think they're coming to plant meth?
Ladies and gentlemen, the state puts forth that we have proven beyond a reasonable doubt that this defendant is guilty of aggravated murder and murder.
All right, still with us, trial attorney Dante Mills. And Dante, you know, she took the stand, told her story. I thought it was a fantastic closing argument by the state. And I think the takeaway for me was there's no doubt that Erica's guilty of something. And it's been 3 hours that the jury's been deliberating, not a long time, and we've seen some quick verdicts. This maybe isn't one of those, so 3 hours doesn't give me pause. Maybe they're just trying to sort out exactly what folks believe and don't believe, but at the end of the day, she's guilty of something, and someone died. So I say she's guilty of murder.
There's no question that the prosecutor in this case did a phenomenal job in their closing, laying out everything that went into the plan. When you have that type of a plan, and like she said, he had fatigues laid out, gloves, all of that supposedly to plant drugs in her car so that she can get caught with the car, with drugs in the car, and he could get custody of their children. That doesn't really make sense. So for the prosecutor to walk through everything that went into that plan and said this was not a plan to plant, this was a plan to kill, a burner phone that was only used to make one call, and that was to get that pizza order in. Those things are pretty clear, and I do believe that they did enough to get a conviction in this case. I wouldn't take note of a 3-hour deliberation. Sometimes a jury just wants to make sure they go through every single thing, that they look at every single argument, they look at every document in order to make sure they're doing the right thing, because this is very serious. This is somebody's freedom that's on the line. Someone was killed. So the fact that they want to go through this information and it may take some time does not mean that they're questioning the prosecutor's theory or whether or not there's a provable case here.
And sometimes the jury, I think, wants to go home and sleep on it after 3 hours to see where they're feeling, how they're feeling, rather, the next morning. I, too, thought it was a great closing argument, by the prosecution. However, the one thing that stuck with me is when she said, well, she was up there minimizing her role. She was blaming it on Chad. Of course she was. Isn't that the whole reason a defendant will testify and hope that at least one juror believes her?
Yes, and the bizarre part about this case is the best arguments for the defendant is Chad. He's just out of control, and he turned, after admitting to the murder, he turned on Erica Stefanko and said she helped me with it, but only after she started dating his best friend and they got married. And then he lost the right to see his children, and he then turned it against her and said, well, you know what? She helped me with this. She should take the fall as well. And he has an obvious reason to do that. And I think Chad poses the biggest threat for the prosecutor because he's unbelievable. So her out is if she can convince people that Chad is the bad guy. I was along for the ride, but not that kind of a ride. I knew that he was a little off, but I didn't know he would do something like commit murder. I thought he would just plant drugs. That's their best defense, is using him as the bad guy because he showed he's a wild card.
And you know, what's interesting, the fact of the children is an interesting fact, because when we look at it, and you mentioned this earlier, why would a woman bring her children to a murder? But the way the state frames it is, why is she there at all? Of course she would bring the children to the murder because that was part of the plan. They knew what was going down. They needed a second driver. So, you know, that's a little fact that I think maybe the jury could be wrestling with, Dante.
Yes, I like that point that she made, because you are thinking, why does she have the children out there? Why would she do that if she thought it could get messy? If she thought, you know, it's just, that piece was a little questionable. But the argument of she was bringing her car. If Chad was going to kill her, there would be 2 cars there, and they didn't want to leave 2 cars there, so there had to be 2 drivers. Unfortunately, the children were small for them to involve them in this, but that means they couldn't leave the children home by herself. They kept saying one was nursing. They couldn't leave the children home by themselves, so they had to take them with them. But the plan was to bring them just so Erica can be there, so that there could be two drivers for both of those cars. And that argument to me made sense and kind of cleared up why, why she would come to the scene and bring her children with her.
I think it was a great argument.
Yes,
I was like, wow, really good.
Because it was a question. There's no question.
Yeah, and you raised it the other day, and I've been sleeping on it. I'm like, why were the kids there? Right. Well, now we have a theory. All right, up next, we continue breaking down the closing arguments in the pizza delivery murder retrial. After the break, we will hear what the defense had to say. Keep it here on Court TV.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a convicted school shooter's mother faces 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, the first parent in America to face homicide charges in a mass school shooting. We'll bring you all of today's key moments as this trial moves ahead. And on the docket, an alleged murder plot in Paradise, the case against Lindsay Shiver. We'll take you through all of the shocking twists and turns ahead of tomorrow's big hearing.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
We are continuing our coverage of the pizza delivery murder retrial against Erica Stefanko in Ohio.
The prosecution says Stefanko played a bigger role in Ashley Biggs' death, saying she actually took part in the murder plot rather than only placing the fake phone call like she claims.
Now, the alleged foundation of the plan was to help Stefanko's then-husband, Chad Cobb, regain custody of the daughter that he shared with the victim by planting drugs in her car, followed by calling the police to make her seem like an unfit mother.
During their closing argument, Stefanko's defense says if that's the case, murdering Ashley Biggs would not have made sense.
They're going to frame it as a tug of war. On this side of the rope, there was a plan to kill Ashley. And on this side of the rope, there was a plan to plant meth. A plan for murder does not get Grace back. The plan for murder, as they call it, got Grace right back to Brittany Dunson and got Chad Cobb in prison for the rest of his life. It's much more logical that the plan would be to plant drugs rather than murder because they did it before. Look at your notes and find where Chad Cobb said that there was a plan to kill Ashley. Find it. You won't. It doesn't exist. There's no plan, and it's not foreseeable for Erica to think that Chad would ever do this. Aside from everything that I've already told you about, that this plan makes no sense, it doesn't solve the problems or whatever, there's no shred of evidence or testimony in this case that could show that Erica could reasonably foresee what Chad was about to do. She says, I did my part of it. She's the caller. She called when they planted drugs the first time. She called when they planted drugs the second time. She did her part of it. And she's a bad person for doing those things. I will tell you that. Getting Brittany and Ashley in trouble, committing felonies to do so, that is not good behavior. But you know what else it isn't? Aggravated murder or murder.
Still with us, Dante Mills. All right, Dante, I think a pretty effective closing argument to say, sure, she had a role. She takes responsibility for that, but it's not murder. It's not aggravated murder. Do you think this will sit with any one of the 12 jurors?
That's the thing. He only has to get one to buy into it. He said, and I'll read it so it's clear, he said it's not logical that they would kill her because that wouldn't solve their problem. One, it would. If the child's mother is taken out of the equation, the natural progression is to have custody with the father. And also, the premise to that is that criminals are smart, right? You can't say this criminal didn't commit this crime because it wouldn't be logical to do so. Criminals do dumb things all the time. And in fact, most crimes are dumb. But so you can't use that as the reason why they couldn't commit this crime or why they wouldn't commit this crime. He also points to the fact that they tried to plant before and said, well, they were just simply doing it again. But if it didn't work before, escalation would make sense, right? So you have that response to that argument. If he's saying Before they tried to do the drug planning, clearly it didn't work because they're still in this situation, so they wanted to plant drugs again. That, I don't know if that makes sense. It would make sense that they would escalate it. So he has some problems with this argument, but again, he only has to convince one person to be on board with that clearly they just wanted to plant drugs. She could not anticipate, Erica could not anticipate that Chad would commit a murder, so she can't be held responsible for it. He only needs one, and we'll see if he has that person. Maybe that's the holdout. Maybe that's why it's taking so long, or maybe not. Maybe the jury's just trying to be very thorough so that they can get it right.
Yeah, and one feather in the defense's cap is that kind of Chad, his testimony was it wasn't meant to be a murder. Now, that's self-serving, obviously, but his thing was, yeah, when I got there, she threw a phone at me. That's what set me off. That started the beating, and then ultimately Erica comes and does the killing. But here's the thing. I think the defense kind of wants its cake and eat it too. During her testimony, they were talking about how Chad was in charge, and also Chad was violent. Chad was someone that was beginning to feel helpless in this situation regarding custody of his daughter. When you take all those things, I wonder if it's not, in fact, foreseeable that something like this could happen if you put this situation in motion.
Yes, that's a great point, Michael. And is it foreseeable? Yes, but the next step was taken. She actually participated in something. So if if Erica was dating Chad and he got agitated and felt helpless, and then he left one night and then came back and said, hey, get the kids together, we have to leave now, which is what she's saying kind of happened, that's one thing. But she participated in this plan to isolate Chad with her, with the child's mom. And when she participated in that, it is foreseeable that if they're isolated alone, that he could do something violent. So I think her participation kind of changes the dynamic of this. So I don't know if that defense's argument is going to work, that he was, an agitated person, that he was violent, but she didn't know he would do anything like that because she participated in getting the ball rolling to have them isolated and alone in a parking lot late at night.
Yeah. All right. We know the state has the last word, so let's listen together to a part of the rebuttal made by the state to this jury.
We know that Chad Cobb goes there and he kills Ashley. They want you to believe that the plan was to plant meth, and that is why she keeps saying it went awry. I really hope that you see through that for what it is. To suggest that that is so clear that she's talking about a meth deal and the reason it went awry. How does murder go awry? Like, oh my gosh, murder goes awry when you get caught. Would everybody agree, right? Nobody plans to do a murder and get caught. That's the part that goes awry. How many lies does she have to tell, right? She's told so many lies throughout this process. What's it gonna hurt to tell some more? And now, all of a sudden, she wants you to believe her. And that's her problem. The problem is if you just look at this as a whole, what happened that night, her conversation with Cindy, it clearly matches up that her and Cindy are talking about the murder of Ashley. They're not talking about planting drugs. So, she has a problem because she's not credible. She has a problem because she lies. She's been caught in lies. She lied to the police multiple times. She tells us she lies to keep her kids. She told us on the stand she lied to stay out of trouble. And now she's in a lot of trouble. And so what lengths does she go to try and buy credibility, right? She needs to buy credibility. She needs to convince you one more time to take a kick at that football.
And those were the final words offered by the state to this jury, still deliberating. They come back tomorrow morning to resume. Thank you to Dante Mills for being with us.